Greetings, everyone. It is yet again, as you all know, I say every time, my favorite time of the month because it is Being Brown at Work live and part two. From what those of you that were with us for part one, you know that the conversation was so meaningful because this topic about building relationships is, as Obi and I were talking before we went live, is so critical now that it's ever been. So if you didn't see us in part one, you want to go catch the replay, but definitely stay with us for part two. Get that iPhone, that iPad, whatever it is you take notes on, because Obi's going to share some wisdom today that's been transformational in his career. So let's get to it. I'm going to get to this wonderful bio, introduce to some of you, reintroduce to some of the others. Mr. Obi Ihenacho. Obi Ihenacho is an accomplished IT professional who brings almost a decade of engineering experience from the highest levels of the tech world. Obi's career trajectory is a masterclass in strategic influence. He has driven success at massive organizations, holding key roles at Meta, Twitter, and currently at Robinhood in corporate engineering. Obi's passion is not just tech, it's bridging the gap between technology and business goals. He thrives on orchestrating cross functional teams to deliver transformative solutions. That means he knows exactly how relationships, not just technical skills, define success. If you are striving to make a tangible impact and secure your seat at the executive table, Obi's insights are indispensable. Totally agree with that. And welcome back, Obi, to Being Brown at Work.
Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, yes, Obi. I mean, we had such a deep and meaningful conversation in part one a couple of weeks ago. And I was so excited for part two because this, as everybody knows, this is when we get into the actionable steps that you can share with everyone. But I'd like to go back though and just revisit some things that you shared in part one that I think would be so important to bring up again, just to reestablish that groundwork. What I loved that you said in the opening of part one is your definition of relationships, because you gave three, which is what I was not expecting. Can you reshare again for the group your three types of relationships and what they each mean?
Absolutely. There's your personal, your professional, and your financial. Your personal is, everything that makes you who you are as a person, your network that helps you make decisions. Your professional are your people who help you move forward in your career. They provide you steps and guidance to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And then you have your financial, which are the people who will help you grow your net worth and make sure that you're not just making money, but retaining money and growing your net worth over time.
Yes. And the reason why I just love that when you shared it in part one is because I don't think we even think about that. When we think of relationships, we immediately go to people, right? And we immediately go to either, okay, these are people in my personal life, these are the people in my professional life. Maybe the two don't have anything to do with each other. But as my audience know, I always say who you are personally is who you are professionally. The circles are going to be similar if it's going to benefit you long term. But when you pulled in that financial piece, having the relationship with finance, I thought that when you had those three, I thought it was just ingenious and so wonderful. I have to ask you though, Obi, is that something that you've always understood, or did you grow to understand those types of relationships?
It's something that I grew to understand over time. In my first few roles in my career, I would make money and I realized that I wasn't really saving as much as I'd like. And so I
Mm.
connected myself with other people who were much farther ahead of me in their careers and in life, and they were able to drop nuggets of like, this is how you structure how you get your paycheck. This is where the different buckets that you should be putting your money into. These types of invaluable information has allowed me to grow my net worth over time and feel more comfortable in myself and my profession.
Yeah, and see, and you did that how? In your relationships, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people that you met. Yeah. So that's why this topic is so important, and why I wanted it to make sure that we had this before the end of this year. You and I talked in part one how unfortunately this has been a very volatile year for in various markets, right? In various industries, and how some people are finding themselves either being laid off or still they haven't been laid off because they still haven't found that opportunity, and how relationships can play a role. Wouldn't you say that? I mean, it's critical, right, Obi?
Absolutely. It's the most important part these days because, when you're looking to, go for a role, there's thousands of applicants all going for the same role. So it's really important not just, what you know, but who you know and how well you know them. That way, when you reach out to ask for support, people are more inclined to be able to help you.
Exactly, exactly, Obi, and I'm glad you said it's not just who you know, but how well they know you. Because I have found more often than not that when those references take place, I mean, people have to really be able to speak to you, right? It's not just, hey, did you know Obi? How long did you work with him? But really be able to speak to who Obi or who Linda is, right? What we bring to the table for sure, our skills and expertise, but who we are as people, and how we show up in the environment and the experience that these people, that these references, our community has had with us. It's so, so important. And I found it can be the differentiator, right? Wouldn't you agree? It can make the difference between you and I as candidates versus someone else.
Absolutely. And it starts with how you show up every day in your work, like showing up with the camera on to meetings, saying hi to people in the hall, just being pleasant to be around will make, will be, have people more inclined to like you, which
There
will
you go.
help with growing that professional network.
Yes, and Obi, you just said something that I often have my clients say to me. Well, Linda, I don't go to work, to make friends. I don't go to work to make friends. And I tell them, well, that's unfortunate that you have that attitude. Okay, they may not be your best bestie where you share your secrets, right? All that stuff. But the connections, understanding that being liked, being, connecting with people is a difference. And I know in part one, Obi, you made a statement about how much time we spend around these individuals, right? I mean, share a little bit more of that.
We spend 8 hours a day with our coworkers every day, which is more time than you typically spend with your family. Because when you get home from work through commuting and whatnot or groceries, you might have like 3 hours with your family, 3, 4 hours with your family at the end of the day, but you're spending 8 hours a day with your coworkers. So you really want to make sure that those relationships are good because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these folks.
Exactly, a lot of time. And I know for me in the industry I'm in, sometimes those 8 hours turn into 10 hours, turn into calls on Saturdays, turn into, they turn into a lot of things. And to your point, a lot of time that I'm spending, either whether I'm in a virtual setting like this and the Teams call, which is what we use in our space, or if I'm actually in the office and I'm going to fill up my water bottle or whatever, and I walk past an office or someone sees me and we connect, we spend a lot of time. And so it's most important, I found, and I agree with you, Obi, to have that mindset that yes, I want to connect. And we're human beings. I mean, I think that's important for us to have a level of connection. And that's why I try to get my clients to change their mindset around this, oh, I don't go to work to make friends. Because I really think that ends up not boding well for them in the long run. So, we've laid the foundation in part one, and we talked a little bit about, we just took a few minutes because I'm so excited about this part two, to reevaluate it or, bring people up to speed. Now I want to get into OB, the actual how, because I know and I would love for you to share your personal story. Remember that you shared with me, and because that's one how, and then you can take it from there. But Obi, share that special story of how what actually happened to you, and having being courageous to establish a relationship. But if I remember correctly, it was in a coffee shop, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
My first role in San Francisco, I used to commute from the East Bay to San Francisco to go to work 5 days a week. I would go to a coffee shop on 10th and Market. It was called Blue Bottle Coffee, and it was attached to the Twitter building. And I'd meet a variety of people there. Very extroverted. I would talk to people. One of my friends is a barista there, so that's why I was inclined to go there as much as I did. And I remember one of the baristas pointed at one of the customers and said, "Hey, Obi, you're so social and you're so fun to be around. You should go introduce yourself to that guy." I heard that he's a pretty big shot at Twitter and that, it might be good to know him. And I was like, okay. And so I went over there and I talked to him. I said, hello, my name is Obi. I love to meet you. And we started talking about Warriors and basketball, because me and my family were big Warriors fans. We're from the Bay. And so we connected around basketball. And then, and that was it. And then we would go throughout our days. A year went by. Every time I saw this person, I'd say hi to them. And so I built rapport and a relationship that way. And I remember seeing a role go up at Twitter for executives IT support engineer. And I was pretty green in my career at the time, but I really wanted to work at Twitter. I would stare up at the building every morning after I got my coffee and be like, I'd love to work at this place one day. And so I reached out to the person that at the coffee shop that I'd known for a year now. And I said, hey, I'd like to apply for this role. And he said, sure, I will put in a reference for you. And so I submitted my application. He put in his referral. And about a couple months later, Twitter reached back out to me and said, hey, we'd like to interview for you for this role. Little did I know that I was talking to a senior VP at the company who had then put my resume on the IT director and senior manager's desks and said, hey, I want this person. And so that was a glowing recommendation for me, as you can imagine. And I went through the whole interview process, and I met 21 amazing individuals over 7 interviews in 2 months. And at the very end of it, they're like, hey, look, you're charismatic, your technical skills are there, and we really want to have you at Twitter. Unfortunately, due to your experience, we can't take you for this particular role, but we like you so much that we're going to open up another role just to get you in the door. And so that's how I started my career. It was, one of the best things that happened to me professionally. I spent 4 great years at Twitter, moved from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3. And I finished at Twitter in that executive IT support engineer role that I applied for.
Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, Obi, when you first told me that story, I thought, what a testimony to being courageous to just walk over to somebody and say hello at a coffee shop. You know what? And the fact that the barista who knew you, right? And knew, hey, he's an open guy, he's a kind guy, that's somebody the two should talk. And you did it. I mean, I mean, I'm going to tell you that story just gives me chills. I've heard it once before. This is the second time I've heard it. Just gives me chills because it lets me know what truly is possible. And you didn't even know who you were talking to. That's what I loved. He didn't throw out his title. You didn't ask the title. You really just connected to an individual who happened to work at Twitter. That's all you knew, is that person happened to work at Twitter. Yes. Oh my gosh. So Obi, if you could share, and then we'll get into some more of the steps that you take. But if you're talking to somebody or somebody in the audience right now saying, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how he did that. He's in a car as a stranger. What? I mean, didn't he? What if the guy didn't want to be bothered? The guy's trying to have coffee. But what ran through your mind? What made you, or what gave you, the confidence or the wherewithal to walk over to this stranger and interrupt his coffee session, to say hello?
Yes, I think, it's really the things that just make us human at heart in terms of communication, having eye contact with someone, smiling,
Mm.
little cues. If you lock eyes with someone and you smile at them and they, turn the other way, or, make a face, and maybe they don't want to be bothered and maybe you don't talk to them. But if you look at someone and, you're smiling and they smile back at you, I think that's just a good social cue that, like, you can go up and say hi to them at the very least.
Ah, good point. That's a very good tip. Body language is everything, and people will respond because you're right. It is human nature, and people will respond when you connect visibly with someone. When, like you said, when you lock eyes, people will respond. It's kind of, I think it's just natural for us to do. We either will respond, or if we're not having a good day and we kind of want to be, we'll do the opposite, like you said. So obviously, this guy must have smiled. He gave you a sign that, hey, I'm open, to at least nodding and saying hello, and might be open to a little more. I mean, I just think that's phenomenal. And look, it gave you the open door into Twitter. Clearly, was a heck of a reference. Clearly, because they created a role for you, and then you ended up with the job you originally applied for. Which, I mean, come on, come on.
Full circle for me.
Yes, complete full circle. So what other tips would you recommend to individuals? Okay, we talked about, hey, don't try to get out of your little comfort zone, take the social cues, and if the door is open from that social cue, step into it. Is any other tips you would give people on building relationships?
Absolutely. I'd also recommend positioning yourself in spaces where the people that you want to meet are. So, for example, like
Ah,
going to networking events, going to event conferences where you can learn about different technologies and tools, putting yourself into spaces where there are people who are trying to connect. The example that I gave was, very serendipitous, as in real life at a
sure.
coffee, but you can also be more intentional about how you look into these things by, it's Google searching. You can, if you're in, X industry, Google search X industry conference, X industry event. I want to learn about this thing that pertains to this career path, and you can go to those spaces and meet those people in person to be able to collaborate and connect and, make and work on things.
Oh, I love that. I truly believe in that as well. I know I've had an experience by going to conferences and connecting with people that have opened doors for me in other areas. I mean, I have been honored to be on a board, and that would have not happened had I not met someone at a conference. And then we built a relationship from there. And then when she was contacted, she said, "Hey, I know someone," right? And she recommended. So I love your idea of that. That is, and conferences are happening again, right there, and even some virtual ones and in-person ones. And so I love that suggestion, absolutely. What else would you, let me ask you this before we get into the next step of building relationships. Do you think, Obi, from your experience, that you need to be kind of strategic in nature because there are different types of relationships, would you say?
Absolutely. I would say it's important to have at least a couple different elevator pitches of like different things you want to connect with people on. That way, meet someone, you can say your, 30-second pitch of like, hey, I'm here to do this. I'd love to connect with people who are doing X thing. That way it signals to the other person whether, it's a good fit for the type of connection that you're trying to make.
Yes, yes, that's good. And so to make sure that you can be, and I don't want people to think strategic might sound a little strong because then it sounds like it's not genuine, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being mindful because the connections are different with different people, which is exactly what you just described, right? Because if what you're interested in isn't what that person is either interested in or connected to, then the match isn't going to work.
Right.
So let me ask you this. So have you found that, some relationships that you've built, OB has transformed into maybe mentors or sponsors? And if so, how did that develop?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's just having curiosity to learn about people and like asking good questions. Like I
Mm,
typically try to connect with people who have who I perceive as smarter than me or have more experience than me, so that I can like learn from them. And then I ask them very pointed questions about particular things that I want to connect with them on. If I want to learn about, finance, I'll ask, not just like, hey, teach me about what to do with my money, but like, what types of investment accounts are, important for someone at 30 years old to like have.
yes.
And that way, when people like respond, they can actually give you actionable insights into like what's really matters to you.
Oh, that's great. And then when you actually end up connecting with these individuals, how do you determine how do you, and maybe I want to make sure I ask this question properly. What is your methodology in determining, okay, this person is going to be kind of just a general relationship of which I have, just kind of random touch bases, but this particular group of persons over here is where I really want to go a little bit deeper and further. And I really believe because of XYZ, these would be great people on my mentorship space or my other space. Is there something that kind of flips for you, a switch or a light that comes on that tells you which way to go with individuals or relationships?
Yeah, I mean, first off is like talking to them when you're talking to them in person, seeing what lights them up when
Mm,
you bring it up in conversation. People's
yeah,
eyes will sparkle, they'll widen, and they'll have genuine excitement when they're excited to talk about whatever uh,
true,
pertaining
true.
to. And then also like on the back end, like after you've connected with someone, you can go on their LinkedIn and you could like read about, their accomplishments, where they worked, what they're working on, and things like that in order to gain further insight into, okay, this is what this person's thinking about. These are probably the things that are within their circle, and then go from there.
Yeah, and I love that fact that you just shared about going to LinkedIn and learning more about them, because I know I've had some people say to me, "Well, how do I build? I don't know what to ask them. I don't know what to talk about." Well, go research them. That's what you just said. Go do some research to get to know who they are, because there's a lot of information out there on LinkedIn that kind of breaks down that concern about what do I talk about with that individual. And I love the fact that because people do light up, and something that they really love talking about, they will light up. Just like I love talking to you today, and and love doing this with Being Brown at Work. This is some great, great advice, Obi. Let me ask you this. Have you ever experienced where you really made an intentional effort and it just didn't go in the direction you thought it would? And how did you handle that? Especially if you ran into the person again, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I try to maintain good relationships with everyone I meet, and even if there isn't an alignment in terms of like what I'm seeking out of the relationship, I'm kind to everyone, and so I'll always
Yes,
I can just be as nice as I can, and I genuinely want to learn more about the person, so that maybe there is something that you do connect on in the future, even if it's not what you originally anticipated. You know, you can
good
always bring
point.
things around.
Yeah, good point. And would you say, Obi, it's a two-way street? I think that some people are worried about, hey, I'm going to ask them a lot of questions. And I think you might have mentioned this a little bit in part one. Not only do we get to know the person for what we're trying to learn, but we also want to bring value ourselves, right, to the conversation or to the relationship.
Absolutely. So like that kind of goes into like the research part that I was talking about. Like if you
Yeah, yeah,
people work in X industry or work with X technologies or things like that, if you are working on a project that might require their expertise, or you see something that might be valuable to them, share it with them. Reach out and say, hey, I know that you work in business systems. I see a role for X over here that that I have a connection with, that I can help connect you to for a referral. Would you be open and interested into pursuing something like that? And people will appreciate the fact that
yes,
you one remembered something about them, and that you went and actioned on it and took time out of your busy schedule, because we all have busy schedules these days, to go
right.
and do some research for them and connect them with someone else that could help them. That's huge. People remember how you make them feel, and if you are
Yes.
showing them that you care, they will absolutely remember you as a person.
Absolutely, Obi. I mean, and that to me is a beautiful way for us to go into wrapping this up, because people will remember how you make them feel, how you treat them. And what you just said, the fact that when you're building relationships, that you're intentional about it being two-way, and that you really remember something about that individual that means something to them, obviously because they shared it with you, and then you are able to reciprocate and act upon that on their behalf, or remember it and extend something that may benefit them, means the world, means the absolute world. And I have found that that even brings you a little bit closer, and that connection lasts for quite a long time, quite a long time. Well, as we start to close this part two session, Obi, is there anything that you want to leave the audience with as they're thinking about, what, I've listened to Obi now, it's the second time this month. I'm going to give this a shot. I'm a little concerned, but I'm going to give it a shot because I need the same kind of transformation he's experienced. I need it in my life. I need it in my career. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I would say start small when you're trying to build a new
Mm,
habit. Um,
yes,
like starting small and getting small wins will boost your confidence and will enable you to then go for bigger wins. What could that look like in real life? Starting small could be, like I said before, identifying a conference that you want. One, it doesn't have to be a bunch, but one conference that you want to go to, and coming up with 3 elevator pitches for things that you're looking to connect with people on, and then going over there and trying to action on those things. And as you find success, you'll realize, oh, I can do this. And then you'll want to do more, and you'll go and do more conferences. And then maybe you might go in person in your normal daily operations, and try to connect with someone in real life outside of the professional environment, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Or maybe walk into a coffee shop like you did.
exactly.
Yes, yes. Well, Obi, this has been phenomenal. Look, any of you, I know that you've met Obi now. This is part two of this month, and you can tell he's a relationship guy. So, Obi, they wanted to reach out to you on LinkedIn to connect. I'm sure you'd be welcome and open to that, right?
Absolutely, please do. I'd be happy to connect with you.
That'd be fabulous. Obi, it's been awesome. Thank you so much. This has been what I believe a very critical topic to talk about. And I love how you shared from your personal experiences what's worked for you. And it's been very inspiring, giving people some motivation to go out and try this. So thank you so much for being my guest on Being Brown at Work for this month. It's been phenomenal, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast, speaking with you and connecting.
Yes, same here. So, everyone, again, reach out to Obi on LinkedIn. This is about relationship building. You never know when you can DM him and connect. You never know where it might take you. And if you want to get some more insight directly from Obi, maybe give him some of your examples or situations that you're in. He might be able to give you a fresher perspective on how to approach that. So, everyone, thank you for joining. Until next time, take care.
Thank you, everyone.